It's Black Monday for college football coaches. Some great jobs are available and getting filled fast. We'll update the list. We'll also update the college football playoff picture after Auburn's win over Alabama and Miami's loss in Pittsburgh. Both we predicted on last Friday's show. We'll preview tonight's game with Matthew Stevens, managing editor for ravenswire.usatoday.com, and recap the top stories from Week 12 in the NFL as OFN Weekend Review on the Ourlads Football Radio Network starts now. All right, thanks for tuning in to the Ourlads Football Radio Network for this Monday, the 27th of November, 2017. I'm your host, Greg DePalma, as we're going to talk NFL college football as we do here on our Monday show. And we only have one more weekend left before we find out who's going to the playoffs, who's going to which bowls. And boy, it's a great time of year to be a college football fan, that's for sure. I'm not sure about after. I've never been a big fan of the playoffs and the bowls because it's politics. Once you involve politics, which it still is, it's politics. It's the only sport that has politics deciding who gets in. So it's not my favorite way of or any way even close of trying to decide a playoff and a championship situation, but it is what it is. So we'll enjoy it for one more weekend, and then we'll find out. We'll see how it goes. Because I look, if you've been listening to me long enough, you know every year there's always something to complain about, something to get upset about. Last year it was Ohio State getting in. And we were dead on when they proved on the football field that they never deserved to be in the playoffs. And we'll find out whether or not somebody gets robbed this time around. Now, coming up is going to be Matthew Stevens to talk about the Baltimore-Houston game tonight in about 10 minutes. So we'll start in the NFL. I tell you what, we talked about this last week, and we did not predict Arizona to upset Jacksonville because we were rooting for Blaine Gabbert, even though we were. How can you not root for Blaine Gabbert to get a win against Jacksonville? Just a feel-good story. But really what it was about was, as I said, even going into the regular season, I had mentioned how much it appeared that Blaine Gabbert was actually looking pretty good in the preseason. And we didn't know what that was. Was that a preseason thing? Was it a change to Arians? And as he even said, when you're on a lot of bad teams with bad talent and bad coaching, what do you expect? That's possible. And I saw the combination of the coaching and the talent and what I saw in the preseason, and it came to light yesterday. I thought Gabbert played a very good football game. Was he perfect? No, but was he, I think, as good as you can expect or want from that quarterback in his career under that situation against that defense? Absolutely. I think it's a great audition, and with all the different teams that need quarterbacks in the draft in the first round, and Arizona, you would think, is one of them. I think Arizona is in a spot now where if Gabbert can play like that for the rest of the season, Arians can say, you know what? If Carson wants to come back next year, all right, well, we'll see. I mean, maybe we want Blaine Gabbert to start. Will Carson be okay with being a backup if that's what we tell him to be? And if that's the case, then maybe Arizona decides, all right, well, maybe we'll draft a quarter. Maybe we'll draft Lamar Jackson in the middle rounds. Maybe we'll draft Kurt Benkert in the middle rounds. Maybe we'll draft Mason Rudolph, in the second round if he lasts to the second round. Maybe, we don't have to go after a first-round guy. I think that's exactly what you get out of yesterday's game. Now, it's one game. But there was a lot I liked about Blaine Gabbert in that game that gives me hope for him, where I still don't see it with a guy that actually played good yesterday, and that's Brett Hundley. I still don't see it. I'm not sold in any way that Brett Hundley is going to turn into, a bona fide starting, a winning starting quarterback. I actually thought there was more in what I saw from Blaine Gabbert in that possibility with that team, Bruce Arians, than what I'm seeing with Brett Hundley in the Packers. I'm sorry. I need to see a lot more from Brett Hundley. He's right now, to me, what I see out of Brett Hundley is what I saw, say, from Geno Smith. That's all. I don't. There's no difference. I was seeing a guy because even when Gino played and played all those games with worse talent, he had games where you went, wow, that's good. That's a good game. Look at that game. He played well. And then he would play a bad game. Then he play a good game. Then he play a bad game. And then but of course he had a lot of baggage. But the point is that that's not going to succeed in the NFL. And he even said so last week. And to the inconsistency back and forth, that's not a starting quarterback. That's a backup. So we will find out whether Brett Hundley can actually put it together over a long period, even just over the next 4 games. Let's see. And then we'll make a determination of whether or not they've got something there. But anyway, great story. Really happy for Blaine Gabbert. Terrible decision by Doug Marrone. I can't believe. Now, we talk about coaching so much. We talk about the difference between why do you think Belichick wins so many Super Bowls? Why do you think the Patriots are still where they are right now? Because they're vulnerable, but they play teams week in and week out that just don't have good coaching, and there's just a talent issue, but a lot of it's coaching. And you just saw with Doug Marrone. I mean, look, he's done a nice little job here with Jacksonville. I'm not going to put Marrone in the same category as I'll put some other pretty bad coaches. But I will put Marrone like a Chuck Del Rio type. A guy that, all right, maybe some years it can go over and go over 500 and maybe he can make the playoffs every once in a while. But do I think he can win the Super Bowl? Can he be a winning coach? No. I don't see that in Doug Marrone, and he is not a rookie coach. That was a rookie boneheaded decision to pass the ball in that spot. That made no sense. Now, if you're at the 30, I got no problem with it. You are not, with 30 seconds left in the game with the ball at the 10-yard line, you are not doing anything but trying to pick up a first down to run out the clock. Knowing that Arizona has only 1 timeout left, all you got to do is run 2 plays and you run the clock out. So it's such a bad decision that that's the kind of proof you need about some of these coaches that just in stressful situations they don't have it. They just don't. And that's not a good sign for Jacksonville. But, look, as long as Tom Coughlin's there, they find themselves a quarterback soon. Another team that needs a quarterback. There's so many teams, even the winning teams, the Steelers, the Giants. Well, not the Giants, but, they have Eli Manning who's had 2 Super Bowl wins. So you got the Giants and the Steelers and the Jags, and you got these teams that need quarterbacks. And then you take a look at, of course, the teams that are pretty bad, like Cleveland that need a quarterback that are obvious, or other teams that are just obviously need quarterbacks, like the Jets and the Bills. And then there are others. There's just so many teams. And Denver. They tried Paxton Lynch out there, and he was terrible. The coaching didn't help. They're babying Paxton Lynch along, which I hate. If you're going to play the guy, play the guy. Okay? Get him. He's not a rookie. So get him out there and let him play. Give him the playbook. How does he not know the playbook? So let him play. Instead, it's I'm going to pass the ball to the wide receivers for little wide receiver screens, and I'm going to do the wide receiver screens, and I'm going to roll them out, and I'm going to do all these little baby things. So I'm going to baby him. Then I'm going to get down to the 1-yard line when Denver at this point is in control of the game. Raiders are still kind of in a fog from last week. And they score a touchdown. Get called back. So they got to go again. But what do they call after they have one running play that doesn't work? They call a pass play. Now, why do you call a pass play? Why? At the 1-yard line. When you've got a young quarterback, you're babying him. Okay? See, I wouldn't baby him in those spots. But I get down to the goal line. I get down to the 1-yard line. Yeah, I'm trying at least 2 runs. First, second down runs. If you don't get in, then I'll do maybe play action, depending on how, what kind of plays I have and, what my strategy is. But how on earth, on second down, do you roll out Paxton Lynch in that spot and put him in a position to make a mistake, which he did, It completely changed the momentum of the game. He never got, because he didn't make any mistakes at that point. He then never got any more, never had any confidence after that. And all of a sudden, the Raiders completely woke up, and the game was over until Trevor Siemian came in and gave him a shot. That is terrible coaching. Doug Marrone. Oh, big surprise that I'm saying the Denver Broncos have terrible coaching. And then how can Sean Payton kick a field goal with 10 minutes left in the game when they're down 3 scores? I really don't understand. Did he think there was 10 minutes to go in the third quarter? Really, Sean? I mean, you're playing the Rams on the road, and you've got 3 key defensive guys out. Okafor out for the year. Your 2 corners out. Okay, this is not, you have to, I mean, how does he not, you're playing the Rams, not the Redskins. Why do you think that you're going to be able to score 2 more times after that and hold the Rams every time? I mean, it wasn't 4th and 18. You had a manageable 4th down. What was it, 4th and 6? I mean, it was a manageable opportunity for Drew Brees. And even if you don't make it, so what? The ball's still at the 5 or whatever. I mean, if you're thinking your defense is going to stop them anyway, which is what you thought, that's why you're going for the 3 scores. Then apparently you're going to be able to stop them and get the ball right back and then march down the field, score a touchdown. I don't know. I mean, for Sean Payton to do that, very, very surprising. Because that's what his thinking was. His thinking was, I got Drew Brees. We'll score 3 times. No problem. Our defense will stop him. But no, the worst was Marrone, and that's not good. But Tom Coughlin will figure it out. Again, he'll get a quarterback soon. Maybe another year or 2, because this Jacksonville team is definitely heading in the right direction. But sooner or later, he'll realize if he wants to get over the top and build a real championship team, he'll have to get a real coach in there. And that's what happens a lot, in the NFL. And really in both college and the NFL, but especially in the NFL. Certain coaches, you want them there because they can help the program get from like the basement, to mediocrity. Once you've done that, you've developed a decent culture. You think he's a good coach for the culture change, discipline, all that kind of stuff. That's what Doug Marrone's there for. But he's not there to win championships because Doug Marrone is not going to win championships. And I think we saw exactly how that would go. Because there'll probably be some playoff games, or at least one for Jacksonville this year. And if it's a close game, I'm not so sure that he's the kind of guy I want making the quick decisions. All right, so more on the NFL and what took place, and of course the playoff picture in a little bit. But let's talk about the game tonight between Baltimore and Houston. And the Ravens have a huge opportunity tonight in a weak bottom of the AFC playoff picture. If they can get a win, they're a 7.5 point favorite tonight. They're expected to win. If they can do that, it puts them in good shape. So let's talk about that. Bring in Matthew Stevens. He's been here before, managing editor for RavensWire.usatoday.com. Matthew, thanks for talking to us tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, Matthew. So we've talked a few times this season, and here the Ravens are. It seems like for the last several years, it's like the Ravens get in this spot a lot where you kind of get the feeling that, maybe they can get rolling here. And if they can get rolling, and Joe Flacco can get hot, then I've said this the last couple of years because I truly believe it, that the Ravens I believe that the Ravens team is probably more capable than any other team in the AFC to match up with the Patriots in the playoffs. That's just the way it's been. I mean, Pittsburgh can't beat the Patriots in the playoffs, but the Ravens can. So, but can they get there? And right now, things are starting to go well. So why are things all of a sudden going well, even though I know they're not that rosy?
Yeah, it's a mix of a few different things. I mean, first, their health. It's weird to say this, that despite having still, 16 or so players on injured reserve, this is the healthiest this team has been since the preseason.
Yeah.
When you have these guys back, when you have Danny Woodhead just came off injured reserve, when you have Maurice Kennedy just came off injured reserve, when you get those guys back, when you finally get your regular guys healthy, and you don't have to keep doing the next man up thing, you're able to go ahead and kind of do more with your defense. You're able to do more with your offense. And one of the biggest things was, getting back defensive tackle Brandon Williams. While he's a defensive tackle, and most people kind of think, well, he's just for stuff on the inside. Getting him back allows that defense to put pressure from anywhere on the field. It allows them to go ahead and stop the run better. And overall, as you've seen from the last few games, the defense is what's carrying this team right now.
Sure.
So just getting healthy is really where it's at.
What on offense with Macklin being healthy and Wallace and Woodhead, and again, as you said, they're as healthy as they're going to be with DeAndre not coming back. Still, what's missing? What is it? Do you think it's just they just need time together, and that if they can win even ugly and rely on their defense for another few weeks, maybe that's enough time that Flacco can get his game going again? Because if he's ever going to get going again for the rest of his career, and then these guys can stay healthy, we need to see it now. Now is the time for him to prove it, right? I'm sure the fan base is starting to get a little antsy.
Yeah, the fan base has kind of been riding him pretty hard this year, and somewhat rightfully so. Obviously, when you're the worst passing, offense in the league, your quarterbacks naturally kind of get a little bit of that flack, regardless of where the issues actually lie. But I think the offense is certainly capable of doing that, but a lot has to kind of change in order to make that happen. This offense the entire year has been, more predicated on short middle passes. When your passes are going for 4 or 5 yards a clip per attempt, you're essentially just rushing the ball but through the air.
Is that a scheme, or is that Flacco? Is he not, or does he not have the talent he used to when he did like to throw the deep ball?
I think yes to all of that, really. I think Marty Morningwig, the offensive coordinator, I think when he came in, he designed a scheme that was trying to keep Flacco from making big mistakes. If we keep the ball close, you don't have to throw as much through the air. You don't have to do the deep passes as often, which are a little bit more of those 50-50 throws. It has not typically worked out in Flacco's favor in the past. But sadly, when you kind of do that so often, all you're doing is now 11 players are within 10 yards of
Sure.
the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
You can't run the ball. You're not going to be able to throw the ball that well. And when you can't do either one of those two things, defense just starts pinning their ears back and starts coming after Flacco.
Yeah.
With an already beat-up offensive line, he's kind of taken the brunt of it this season, which means you're not going to get the deep ball going. So guys like Rashad Perryman and Mike Wallace, they're not designed to go 4-yard slants. That's not who they are. And when 2 of your guys are speedsters, and Jeremy Macklin's the same way, when all your guys are speedsters and you're not throwing it down the field, well, you're effectively destroying all of your weapons, and those weapons aren't that great to begin with.
So is there any reason to have optimism that either the game plan starts opening up more, also maybe reliant that the offensive line is going to be able to protect Flacco long enough so he can throw the deeper passes with Woodhead there? Does that even in some way, having, of course, more weapons out there, even if they aren't of the variety of in the deep passing game, still more weapons means more guys in one-on-one situations. Will that open things up? So should the fans start to feel pretty good about, without going, of course, into any sort of overconfidence, which I can't believe that's going to happen anytime soon. But is there reason for them to kind of start, okay, maybe?
Yeah, I think, like I said, everything's there for them to do this. You've got 3 speedsters. Rashad Perryman, no one's catching him if you can get him on the straightaway. Same thing with Mike Wallace, and really even Jeremy Macklin for that matter. If you can start doing that stuff, great. The offensive line, while it's gotten a bad rap, and I think even Ravens fans have kind of pointed to the number of injuries there and kind of written them off, they've done fairly well. Flacco, I think, has been sacked on roughly about 6% of his dropbacks. That's a pretty good rate in the NFL. Um, you know, all those things are there. It's just more or less the scheme needs to open up, and I think
Okay.
both Flacco and Morningwig need to stop being afraid of making a mistake. And while you have a defense that's great, when you put up 23 points despite getting the ball in Green Bay territory 5 separate times last week,
Sure.
that's not going to cut it in the NFL. It's not going to cut it against the Patriots. It's not going to cut it against the Steelers. It's not going to cut it in the playoffs, period, even if you make it that far.
As far as the defense, then, what is, because we know this defense isn't, even though the three shutouts look great, we know it's not as good as the championship defenses they've had here. But I think we also talked early in the season about the fact that the defense was looking better, especially on paper, that this was a better defensive group, talent wise, and now that they're healthier as well. What is the difference? Which players specifically have stepped up, that have been able to apply enough pressure, get in the backfield, cause the type of game-changing type of defensive plays that were really the bread and butter of the dominating defenses from the past?
Well, I think there's two things, and primarily it's the health of defensive tackle Brandon Williams, like I mentioned before, which kind of opens up the scheme a little bit more on defense for Dean Pease, the defensive coordinator. Uh, but in addition to that, Terrell Suggs has been kind of finding his success in the last few weeks. I mean, he has 7.5 sacks now in the season and is actually on pace for one of his better seasons as a pro, despite being in
Okay.
his 15th year. It's a mix of everything. I mean, it's just everybody's kind of coming together. Things are gelling a little bit more. You're seeing both safeties Eric Weddle and Tony Jefferson. They're starting to work together a little bit better. And earlier in the season, they just kind of had some issues with communication, with tackling, with some of the more basic things, and
Sure.
it opened up things in the secondary a little bit. So it's an overall thing. But if I had to choose one player, it's Brandon Williams being back in this lineup.
And now the secondary itself, is this the best secondary that the team has had in a few years, without a doubt?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said it, in the off season that the addition of Brandon Carr from the Dallas Cowboys was the best addition this team made this off season, and they spent big money on bringing in safety Tony Jefferson. But Carr was, just by being healthy regularly, has allowed this secondary just to kind of do their thing, and stay consistent and kind of ride out some of the other injuries they've had elsewhere, and that's helped their defense. I mean, so much this season. Now, in addition to that, I mean, Jimmy Smith, the other cornerback, the starting cornerback, is having a banner year. I mean, I think Pro Football Focus rated him as the lowest passer rating thrown on since Darrell Revis, a couple of years ago. So when you have that type of play, yeah, I think that's really helping them out as a whole in the secondary. Are those two cornerbacks?
Who's the best as far as the pass rush? Any of the young guys stepping up? Anyone in particular in the front seven? Anybody breaking through and showing you something? Because I know there's been a lot of players there that Ozzie Newsome has gone after to try to see if he can uh, get back to the pressure defense that disrupts and has been so successful for the team over in recent years, and that's been a problem. So is there anyone in particular? Is it more of a group thing? Nobody's really stepping out. Of course, Suggs you mentioned, but he's been around forever. So what about some of the younger guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big name right now on the young guys is Matthew Judon. He had a 2-sack forced fumble game last week against the Packers. He's at 5 on the season, and he's kind of coming into his own a little bit more. We've seen those flashes earlier in the season, but now he's starting to consistently put those games together and become, somebody that you can kind of team up with Suggs to get pressure on both sides, and that's been a huge help. There's a bunch of other guys there that, again, are showing those little bit of flashes, but they just don't have the complete game there enough to warrant enough snaps to make a huge impact. But guys in the future that I'd look toward are Tyus Bowser. He's a guy that I think is doing incredibly well. And then Tim Williams is another guy that I think will kind of get started more toward the end of this season and hopefully be in the running for a starting job kind of next year.
Now, next coming up for Baltimore, you guys get the Steelers coming up, right? That's
Yes.
Is that next week or that's in 2 weeks, correct?
That's in 2 weeks, yeah.
2 weeks. And that's a national TV game, right?
It is. December 10th at 8:30.
All right.
It's a big one.
Yeah, so that's now what's the playoff situation right now? So if the team can win tonight, where do you guys stand as far as the playoffs?
If the Ravens win tonight, they still hold the number 6 seed because they hold a conference record tiebreaker over the Buffalo Bills. And then after that, there's not really a whole lot of competition. It's really just the Bills that the Ravens actually have to watch out for, barring losing a bunch. But for the most part, if the Ravens are able to win out, maybe drop a game, they should be able to walk in as the number 6 seed.
And how's the schedule look besides the Steelers? Is it a manageable schedule? Is it reasonable to believe if they play good football that they're going to be able to win the majority of their games?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the schedule looks a lot like tonight's game. You've got the Houston Texans, who are an okay team, but a little beat up, starting a quarterback that isn't their normal one. They've got the Detroit Lions, the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's going to be a tough one. Then the Cleveland Browns, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, if we're going by how they've looked this season,
yeah,
I mean that's a very manageable portion. They should maybe drop one, maybe to the Steelers, and the Steelers didn't look that great last night against the Green Bay Packers.
Sure, yeah. And look, if the Ravens are going to be realistic as far as anybody look, the Dolphins made the playoffs last year, so getting into the playoffs you can do that, especially in the AFC. But if you actually want to prove that you can beat a good team and be a team to keep an eye on, then the one team that the Ravens are going to have to beat the rest of the way to prove that are the Steelers. So, if you lose that game and you still get to the playoffs, I think most people are going to go, yeah, but they'll be in and out. But if you can beat the Steelers and make the playoffs, then people better watch out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think just like you said, if they beat the Steelers, that's the type of end of season run that you end up talking about on a Super Bowl team. Not to say that the Ravens are going to be a Super Bowl team, but that's the type of thing where at the beginning of the season, not all that great. They had some issues, but those last 6-7 games, all of a sudden they got on a roll. Things started picking up, and they went into the playoffs with a ton of confidence. And that's the usual conversation that you have with a Super Bowl winner a lot of the times.
By the way,
I mean, it's certainly there.
Is there still talk at all? I mean, how do the fans? Do the fans? Most of them still okay with the coaching staff. Well, with Harbaugh specifically, with Newsom. I mean, I got to believe that Newsom is golden, but you never know. And then of course Harbaugh. I thought Harbaugh would have been golden, but I've heard some things. So how's generally the fan base been to the coaching staff and Ozzie before maybe things started to turn around the last couple of weeks?
It's tough. I think each week you'll get a different reaction from the fans on who needs to get fired. But, I mean, this season as a whole, really everyone's names kind of come up. I mean, Ozzie Newsom's name's come up as going, he hasn't had the greatest track record recently in terms of drafting Pro Bowl players or drafting talent that's, starting on this team. He has missed a few times in terms of free agent acquisitions. Maybe it's his time to go. Then you've heard the complete opposite, which is, Ozzie's golden. He's never going anywhere until he wants to go somewhere. The same is true with Harbaugh. There's been talk about, 4 seasons of not exactly making the playoffs. And this
true.
is the type of,
look at Coughlin.
Yeah, well, exactly. Look at Coughlin. I mean, look at Brian Billick in terms of the Ravens. Same type of thing. You miss the playoffs when you're expected to go. Steve Bisciotti, the owner, typically doesn't go ahead and deal with that very often. And as much as, they gave him a 1-year contract extension, that doesn't really mean a whole lot in the NFL. So he could very well be gone if they miss the playoffs again. And then vice versa, you've heard a little bit of when he wins, the team looks amazing. So I think just as inconsistent as the Ravens have been this season, the talk has been inconsistent as well. And I think realistically, it all comes down to if they make the playoffs, everyone's safe. If they don't, we're going to hear a lot, and we're going to be writing a lot about, do guys need to go, and who's out there to possibly replace them.
Is it possible that DaCosta stays there and takes over? I mean, because a lot of people have been wondering why he hasn't become a GM somewhere else, and is it possible he just takes over?
Yeah, I mean, I think the general consensus is that DaCosta is kind of been groomed to take over for Ozzie when eventually he goes. I think it also helps. I mean, the last guy that kind of took on that type of a role somewhere else was Phil Savage for the Browns. I mean, he's currently writing articles, I think. So clearly it didn't go so well for him outside of Baltimore. So, I think it's a mix of a few different things on that. But the general consensus is, that it's DaCosta's job whenever Ozzie Newsome decides to step down.
All right, so enjoy the game, Matthew, and good luck tonight, because obviously that's going to, if anything would happen as far as a loss, then that could really spiral the wrong way. But the team keeps winning, it could lead to much better things, and we'll look forward to talking to you hopefully later on this season, and maybe even a run into the postseason.
Excellent. That sounds like a plan.
All right, appreciate it, Matthew. We'll talk to you soon.
Oh, thank you very much. Have a good one.
You too. All right, that's Matthew Stevens, managing editor for ravenswire.usatoday.com. And I've already made my pick. You know that. I've got the Ravens tonight over Houston. And I actually had, so far, even if I lose tonight, I've had a very good week. We talked about this on Friday's show with Tony Mejia on our NFL preview show. We went through a whole bunch of trends. I to the point coming into this week, I was not having a good year in the NFL, having a very good year in college, not having a good year in the NFL. I just couldn't figure it out. I was like, what's going on? And I've had late starts before. Having a late start is not unusual for me in the NFL. Because I've never had problems in college. I actually say never. I've had a year or two I've had a late start in college, but I've never had. I mean, I usually always will have late starts in the NFL more often than not. Whether it's a few weeks or sometimes 6 weeks or something. But now we're going into week 12, and I'm like starting to panic. What's going on here? I can't figure things out. What am I doing? What am I doing wrong? So I looked at the information and I decided something has to be amiss. And we talked about it on the show last week on the Friday show, which was what I was noticing, because I've always been big in win and cover strategy. And that let's start with that, win and cover, okay? Because if you win, you're going to cover. That's just the bottom line. And that's something that I, as a handicapper, again, not a professional like Tony, but as a handicapper doing a lot of the handicapping, it's the one thing that I stuck with for years because I noticed how much it worked. Because for instance, if you just take a look at what we talked about on the show last week, as far as the most recent numbers, like last week, I think it was 12-1-1 was the record, I believe it was. If you won, you covered in the NFL. So I used that as an example. And then on the show on Friday, we talked about the same thing that happened on Thursday's games. The teams that won covered. Now, I'm not saying that's an easy thing, because picking winners is not very easy in the NFL. It can go crazy from week to week. But still, in other words, what you do is you don't worry about the odds. That's what you do. Don't worry about the line. Now, double-digit spreads, that's different. All right. Now, unfortunately, there were 5 this week, and I did take some. I hit some, 3 of them. I missed some. Pittsburgh. Okay. So what was that? 3-1 on the double-digit spreads. I think 3-1. I don't think I did. I forget which was the 5th one, but I don't think I did all 5. But I try to avoid the double-digit spreads. But single digits, like the game tonight. Okay. If you think Baltimore's going to win, don't worry about the 7.5. Just don't. Because again, just taking a look at overall for the year, get this. Going into this week, okay, if you won, you covered with a record of 132, 22, and 6. That's right, 132 wins, 22 losses, and 6 ties. So if you won, you covered, okay? Now, the problem was that I wasn't seeing as much of that early in the season. It was a little bit the first few weeks of the season, it just wasn't going like there were some 9-4s and 10-3s, and that's not what I'm looking for. I mean, that's not going to get you 132-22. 12-1-1 will, 12-2, 12-1, 11-1, those kind of weeks in a row. That's what you're looking for. And it took a while to get that kind of run. It took maybe 4 or 5 weeks. Same thing with favorites. Okay. Because the first 6 weeks of the season, favorites only won 56% of the time. Crazy, right? 56% of the time. I mean, won and covered. The last 5 weeks, they won and covered 82% of the time. Okay, so that is a tremendous number. Not won and covered, because I don't want to get confused. Okay, just one. And the reason I'm saying won and covered is because if you win, you cover. Okay, so obviously, if you have a great run, if you're always winning and covering when you win, then obviously the favorites. If you're a favorite, then and they win, then obviously they're going to cover, and that's what it is. So if the favorites are winning now, which they've been winning 82% of the time heading into this week over the last 5 weeks, and you're winning and covering, then you know that, okay, if I've got a favorite tonight like Baltimore, and the favorites have been winning, and winning is people teams that cover win the game, then I kind of feel good about Baltimore. Okay, now you might. Now again, that's not to say that that's going to happen all the time. It's just saying that that's if you like the favorite. Because if Houston wins tonight, they're going to win. That means they win and cover. Okay, but I think what we're also seeing is that as we get later in the season, you start to get. I think you start to understand where, because we've talked about this a lot. First beginning of the season, and then even at the midway point, Tony and I talked about you need in the NFL half a season sometimes or more to kind of figure things out, or at least figure things out to an extent. On average over the course of 32 teams. Of course, we're not going to completely figure things out, but it just it gives us a much better gauge, and that's where we are right now. We have seen enough games now that we kind of get the feel. We're getting the feel for which teams are good and which teams aren't. Now, it doesn't mean that sometimes good teams aren't going to have bad weeks, and it doesn't always mean that sometimes bad teams are going to have bad weeks. It's just that for the most part, you kind of get a sense. And I think because of that sense of what we're getting, when you see a favorite then going up against a dog like tonight, you say to yourself, well, the Ravens are playing well. Okay, Houston won, and they had their first win in cover with Deshaun Watson not under center. So now what I usually say with that is, well, do you really think after waiting the whole season for that first win that they're going to win 2 in a row? Did they win twice? Do it on the road too? Against that defense with Tom Savage, a quarterback? The percentages are not there at all. The percentages tell me, no, that's not happening. So then I go into, well, favorite, win and cover, taking the Ravens. And so anyway, fact is it's worked for me this week. I hope it continues to work the rest of the year. Hopefully it wasn't just a 1-week thing. I don't know where. I haven't even looked yet. Let me see exactly what my record was this week with this newfound information. Well, we hit 2 out of 3 upsets this week. We hit Buffalo and Arizona. We missed on Denver. But we hit Buffalo at plus 350, so that was nice. And Arizona was plus 190. So that puts us at what? 350, 190, 450, 550, 540, 440. So right there, we've made up 440 just on the dogs because we came in at minus 1670 this week in the NFL. But right now, just in the dogs, we made up what was it? What did I just say? 440. So that puts us at 1230, minus 1230. So now in the NFL, right in our regular picks, We hit on Minnesota, Chargers, Washington, Atlanta, New England, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, Seattle. The only one we lost was Pittsburgh. That's it, which was last night. So we don't want to go on a 2-game losing streak after the week we had. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Back to 7. That means between the 440 and 700, we are now at 11 plus 1140 for the week. So we are now only 530 back after being back 1670. We haven't had a plus week since October 8th. And this is the week we've been waiting for to get us going. So hopefully we can end on a good week. And obviously we feel real good about it. And we're going to hope, we're going to just hope to keep it going. In college, we're plus 3,570, so we're plus 3,500 going into the week. I haven't looked at how we did this week yet. How we did yet. But we'll get into college in just a second. So wrapping up as far as the NFL, as I mentioned, we had the Bills in their win, and that was more of a case of me just not believing that Kansas City was ready to come out of it yet. We talked about this on Friday's show with Tony. I just don't think Kansas City's the type of team that can come out and just blitz you, like the way the Chargers blitzed Buffalo the week before, or even the way the Saints blitzed Buffalo the week before that. I don't think that Chiefs were going to be able to do that because that's just not the Chiefs. I know how they play with Andy Reid. They slowly build up to getting hot, and then they stay hot for a few hours, and then they can get on. And all of a sudden, you look, they're on a 7-8 game winning streak. Or the exact opposite, which is we're seeing right now. But all it will take will be one win. How that happens, who knows? Maybe because they play the Jets and the Jets give the game away, like they give the game away a lot this year. That's what they need. The same thing happened with Atlanta, and look at them. Look at Atlanta's dug themselves out of a hole. So all you got to do is kind of get a win and get your confidence going. And if they can do that, then all of a sudden they play a little bit better, and all of a sudden the Chiefs are on a 3 or 4 game winning streak to end the season, and people are going, "Oh, can the Chiefs do something?" And then they'll lose in the playoffs like they always do. But I even if the Chiefs had won on Sunday, I was kind of expecting, like if the Chiefs had come back and won the game in the fourth quarter, that's what I was expecting is a slow, a competitive win, and I figured that was a good enough risk on the money line, especially because I did believe that Tyrod Taylor, him being back, was going to help the morale of the group, of the team. I just kind of felt that was going to, because I just think that the decision to go to Peterman was a smart decision. It was, everybody piled on McDermott. And remember, we talked about it last week. Oh, Tyrod Taylor was benched because of racism. Oh, how can you go to Peterman? Oh, when McDermott doesn't, it's a terrible decision. He doesn't know what he's doing. And we backed him up 100%. And we backed him up so much because we were confident that we knew what he was doing, that even though he made the right decision, again, to go back to Taylor, we felt that morale was going to be fine, that the decision was a smart one, and it might have even just a little bit helped him out with morale. Just emotionally, just kind of, hey, all right, we got Tyrod Taylor back, and okay, let's go get him, that kind of thing. And look, I'm sorry, but whatever it was, okay, it worked. Okay, whatever it was, it worked. And that's, I don't, all I know is that if I am a fan, that's what I want to see. I want to see Lynch get a shot. He stunk. Okay, Simeon comes in, almost leads the comeback. I had no problem with the way that happened. I had a problem with the coaching. I thought the coaching was terrible, as I mentioned before. I thought the way that they coached up Lynch in the beginning of that game, and again, if they run the ball into the end zone and take a 7-0 lead, Denver could have won that game. Who knows? Maybe 10-7. Lynch would have started the whole game, and he would have felt good about himself, and they might have won that game 10-7. But the coaches screwed that up because they put Lynch in a position to lose. And as soon as they did that, and which is, again, not surprising because I said this for weeks, the Denver Broncos coaching staff is the worst coaching staff in the NFL. It is awful. And so it shouldn't be a surprise of how they handled that situation was wrong. But at least as a fan's sake, you got to see Lynch. He didn't play well. You go back to Simeon. If you're a Bills fan, you're not doing anything with your quarterbacks, just like Denver. You go get to the young kid. You see Peterman. He doesn't play well. You go back to Taylor. This is what I preach all the time. This is what we want to see as fans. Why is it that when the cornerback has a bad game, and if he's not a superstar and he's fighting for a job and he doesn't play well, you sit him and you move a guy up? Same thing for a defensive end. Same thing for an offensive guard. All these other positions, if you're not doing well, next guy up. But for some strange freaking reason, coaches have a hard time with the quarterback. They can't take the quarterback out. No matter how poorly the quarterback is playing or how mediocre the quarterback is playing. Fact is, he's the quarterback. Oh, if I take him out, then if I put the other guy in, it's almost like they feel like it's got to be some sort of a lifelong decision. No, it doesn't. You've been doing this for weeks, or you've been doing it all season. It's not working out. You need something. So, it's not fair for the rest of the team and players playing the other positions. Why is the quarterback got to be treated special? Why does that position treat special when that player isn't living up to his responsibilities? So sit him down for a week. Bring in the backup. He's there in practice every week. He's participating. He wants to start. No backup doesn't want to start. So give him a shot. They gave him a shot. Didn't work. Go back to the starter. More coaches need to do this. Okay? And the fact that the Bills did it when they were trying to fight for a playoffs even speaks more. I mean, and just look at Minnesota. Minnesota really had it took even the last 2 or 3 weeks for Minnesota to realize, or at least you would think, for Mike Zimmer to realize that this is Case Keenum's team now. It's the way you should always hold the quarterback to the same standards as the other players on your team. And if he's not playing well for several weeks and he's not one of these golden starters anyway, then you play the next guy. Just like with Lynch, you play him a half. He doesn't play well, bring the guy back. It's like with this Landry situation with the Dolphins. See, Landry is calling out Gaze for not throwing a red flag. I mean, who does that? Seriously. It's like when Matt Forte called out the Jets, Morton, for not running the ball more. What is it with these players nowadays? I mean, seriously. I don't ever remember, unless you were on a coaching staff that was about to get fired, or you had a player that you knew wasn't going to be there anymore. I just don't remember this happening where players just went out and criticized the coaches out in public. And Landry's criticizing. Now look, I thought that Gaze was going to run the show there, and he was going to have the ability to be the man, and they were going to give him time to be the man. I mean, heck, they made the playoffs last year. So I thought the Dolphins go to the playoffs all the time. So he made the playoffs last year. He loses his starting quarterback before the season begins. As much as I'm not a big Tannehill Hill fan, but he did lose his quarterback. And by the way, don't forget he was in the playoffs last year with Matt Moore. So he doesn't have a quarterback. He gets the team to the playoffs. He doesn't have a quarterback this year, and they're actually hovering around 500. And yet it appears that, I don't know, is there a problem there at Gaze? Because even though I've said before, when he got hired, I was never sold on him. I didn't know if he was going to be a great coach or not, but I never was like, oh, Adam Gaze, oh boy, you got to get him. Remember I said this about Shanahan and McVay? I never said that about Gaze. And yet I thought Gaze did a tremendous job. I had to give him credit for it. That was a good job. But I don't know. It seems like, is there something wrong with Gaze? It's either that or there's something wrong with the players. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not a Dolphin fan. I guess we got to talk to somebody that covers the Dolphins sometime soon. That would be a good idea to find out what's going on down there. Uh, but the way things like, hey, look, all I need to know is that before Gaze got there, they didn't have any winning. He goes there, they win a little bit, and he did it with backup quarterbacks. So I'm willing to trust Gaze, but maybe I'm wrong. Yet Landry comes out and throws his coach under the bus. I'm sorry. I mean, and then I got a writer that's backing him up. The article that I read the writer's backing up Landry. The writer in this article that brought this out, I think it was at Pro Football Talk, never once in the article questioned why Landry was saying this, just like I just did. He was like, you know what, maybe it's a pretty good point. Now, if you want to say he has a pretty good point, that's fine, but you should also like wonder why he's calling out his head coach and questioning his decision making. So it's these, so that's why when I say that, when analysts want to say things of the like, oh, you can't make these decisions because you'll lose the locker room. You don't think about losing the locker room. If you have to think about losing the locker room, you've already lost the locker room. And you've never won the locker room. Okay? If you don't have the respect of the players, that when you make a decision at any position, especially quarterback, and you don't have that respect, so when you make a move, whether the fans like it or the players are wondering about it or not, fact is, if anybody's worried that the players are going to revolt in the locker room, well, that's the thing. They never respected the coach in the first place, and you've already got a problem. So you don't worry about what the players are thinking. I mean, seriously. I mean, there's nothing wrong with getting input. Matter of fact, you should. That's what there's captains for. The veterans on the team. That's why it's important to have them. Coaches talk to the veterans. What's going on? Pulse of the team. All that kind of stuff is perfectly fine. It's what you should do. But the coaches run the team. And if the players ever feel like they're running the team or they have some sort of say in the direction of the team, the personnel decisions, the starting position, all that kind of the positions, all that kind of stuff, you're not going to win. That's not a team. So you don't worry about what the players think when you make those decisions. And I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that all these coaches know what they're doing, because a lot of them don't. Okay, so I'm not trying to say that at all. But there is, if look, and that's management's fault. That's management's fault to hire the right head coach. So the right head coach does get the respect of the players. But it's just weird the way things are going on right now. It just is. All right. So anyway, we'll see what happens with Baltimore Houston tonight, and see if the Ravens, because I think the Ravens should win the game tonight. But that offense you're just never sure about. Okay. College now, of course, the big story is Auburn beating Alabama, and so I was listening to some of the analysts today, and same. Feinbaum he is. I don't know. I don't know. Did he go to Alabama? I mean, he must have went to some school in the SEC, because he just can't get enough of the SEC. He can't get enough of Alabama. He tries to make every excuse to sideways about Alabama. What did I tell you? What did I tell you? Remember last year, okay, when we were going over the playoff situation, and Feinbaum and guys like Herbstreit and these guys, especially Herbstreit with Ohio State. I mean, forget that. But Feinbaum because of his SEC, and Herbstreit because of his Ohio State. And you got to hear that they're so biased. And it's just, I mean, if you can't figure out that these guys are biased, then you're not paying attention, and you're giving them too much credit. And analysts that are biased are dangerous, because when they're biased, then they're going to be wrong. They're going to be wrong a lot. And Feinbaum early on the season, remember we told you how he made it sound like Alabama was God. Like, oh, there's no way Georgia could be number one over Alabama. Haven't you watched Alabama play? I mean, that would be ridiculous. Haven't you seen them play? And now all of a sudden, because they're not as good as he said they were, now Auburn's number one. Oh yeah, Auburn should be number one now. So why? Because they beat your mighty Alabama? Now, I'm not saying that Auburn isn't going to end up as a national championship team, because I predicted that they would be last week. Now, I don't know if they're going to go ahead and become that. I hope they will, because that's my prediction. But you can't go from 1 week saying that Alabama is God, then they get beat by a 2-loss team, and all of a sudden, just because my God team lost, so the team that beat my God's got to be the next God. Oh, what a coincidence. That team's from the SEC too. So come on, man. This is the stuff it's the same high-profile major program nonsense. These guys, some of these analysts just can't get over it. That's why I pride myself in the fact that this week alone on the network, on the Ourlads Football Radio Network, we are going to be previewing. Tomorrow we're going to preview the Conference USA Championship game. All right, we're going to have both Chuck King on to cover FAU and Brett Vito on to cover North Texas. All right, we're going to talk Memphis football. And I'm going to try to get Mark Daniels on again from Central Florida so we can do the AAC championship game preview. Now, we're also going to talk with Carlos Mendez about TCU. I'm going to try to hook up again with Ryan Aber. So we get a complete Big 12 championship preview. And then, of course, Gary Furman with Miami. We're going to try to get Clemson on. We've got Kevin Noon to talk Ohio State, try to get our Wisconsin guy back. And we've got Brian Matthews later in the week on Friday to talk Auburn. I'm going to try to hook up once again with Anthony Dasher to get the Georgia side. So we're getting them all. But the point is we're going to talk just as much SEC, Big 12, ACC, Big 10, and I'm also trying to hook up Pac-12, of course, as we are with Conference USA and American Athletic. And I pride myself on that. I pride myself on the fact that we are not going to be biased to the big programs and the big schools, because that's a dangerous situation to be in. And that's what these guys are doing. And then when you have a season like this season, when there's true parity and everybody's going, I don't know. I mean, seriously, can Miami be in? Can Georgia be in? Can Alabama be in? What about Ohio State? And what if TCU wins? Well, that's what we've said for years. That's what we said the last couple of years when they did this N1 playoff shenanigan stuff. You can't have a true playoffs with 4 teams. There is no such thing. It's not a playoff. You want to have a playoff, you have to have at least 8. You want to do it the way everybody reasonably believes it should be, you have 16. And then we can live happily ever after. I mean, tell me who wouldn't want to see Central Florida against Alabama in the first round? Who wouldn't want to see that? I mean, I don't, it's about the old school presidents. They've been there. It's like the Senate. They've been there too long. Or Congress. They've been there too long. They've been there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And as soon as they leave with their old ways and fresh blood comes in, then we can get new creative ways of thinking and understanding that it doesn't always have to be about the bowls and this and that. We can actually make a lot of money. Just more money than we're making now if we have these playoffs. Because people will tune in. And just imagine the drama of having Central Florida match up with the big school in the first round. And I've said it before. I think what you do is you have 16 teams. It's very simple. 16 teams. Right now, if you have 10 conferences, you do 16 teams. You get one conference champion. That includes the Sun Belt. So you get 10 automatic bids, and you get 6 at large. That's it. It's that simple. There's your 16. Those are your 16 teams. And then the Sun Belt champ is obviously the 16th seed. and the 16th seed goes up against the 1 seed. And I mean, people, well, but they'll never win. Well, do you ever see the 16 seed beating the 1 seed in the college basketball tournament? But they do it because they deserve to be there. They deserve to have their shot. So, and by the way, have you seen Troy knock off LSU? Have you seen Troy give Clemson a good game last year, the national champions? So let's say Troy is the champ. Who said they can't give him a game and make it fun for a little while? And maybe that's what it'll be in 20 years. But that's the way it should be. And once they get there, it's the way it'll always be. And then they'll look back at this silly system we're dealing with every year, and they'll go, "That what? You did what? You had people, you had a committee deciding who was the player? Oh, committee? What is this? Committee?" So Auburn beats Alabama. And look, we went over all the scenarios last week, and you know what? It all worked out pretty much what we told you. That there was a good chance that Miami would lose, Miami and or Clemson would lose, and Miami did. And that's who we favored. We said Pittsburgh, it was a good shot that Pittsburgh would beat Miami, and they did. So Miami's out. And people are going, well, can't Miami, the winner of the ACC is in, right? No, the winner of the ACC championship is not in. Now, the only way the winner of the ACC is in is if it's Clemson, number one. And number two, if Miami beats Clemson, they will need help. And first and foremost, they need Wisconsin to lose. That's their best shot because Wisconsin's already a 6-point dog to Ohio State. Now, Oklahoma's not going to lose because they're not losing to TCU. But if they did, if they were somehow upset, then if you had Oklahoma and Wisconsin lose, now Miami can get in. Now, do I think they should be in? No, I don't. Because I don't think Miami's better than Ohio State or Penn State. And to tell you the truth, I'm not even sure they're better than USC. And to tell you the truth, I'm not even sure they're better than Central Florida. To tell you the truth. But they would be in. That's how Miami gets in. You got to have Oklahoma and Wisconsin losing. All right, because let's say Miami wins and Oklahoma and Wisconsin both win. All right, you're going to have your SEC champ. And then, like I said last week, then Alabama's going to get in. So you're going to have two SEC teams, two SEC teams if Miami wins, Oklahoma and Wisconsin. Now, let's just go with what we think is going to happen. Okay, Clemson now is going to beat Miami. What's the point spread on that game, by the way? That is 10. Wow. Not about 10. 10's a big number. But, yeah, Clemson's looking good right now. But I don't know about 10. That's a big number. So, but we'll make a decision later in the week on that one. All right. So, but we think, all right, Clemson's in, right? And somebody, I forget what it was, Clemson's best team in college football. I mean, come on. I'm sure you didn't think they were the best team in college football last year when we did. So don't jump on no bandwagon when it's too late to do it because you're now jumping on a bandwagon that shouldn't even be ridden. Because there are flaws with Oklahoma and the most on offense. They don't have Deshaun Watson. The defense is a little bit better than they were last year, but they don't have Deshaun Watson. So I'm sorry. That's you go up and I understand Oklahoma doesn't have a great defense, but Baker Mayfield, I would take him. So I think right now, yes, I'm going to have Clemson in. Yes, I'm going to have Oklahoma in. As I've said for weeks, I'm going to have Wisconsin beating Ohio State. And I still believe that. I really do. And I felt that. And I don't want to hear about any injury excuse from JT Barrett. Fact is, that game was close because it was close. It wasn't close because Barrett was injured. Okay? It's close because it was close. And that Michigan team is not better than the Wisconsin team. And I expect Wisconsin to handle Ohio State. Don't forget Penn State handled Ohio State early in the game as well until Ohio State got rolling. And don't forget Oklahoma handled Ohio State. When Ohio State plays the better teams, and look, it's not all JT Barrett. Okay, JT Barrett at this point in his career, because he's a senior, should be playing his best football, and he has. But he's also he's a fallible player. I mean, and he doesn't have any weapons. He's got nothing. He has no weapons. No guys. He's got some top rated guys out there, and like Ohio State has, but none of those guys have developed. It's all the running game. That's all he has. And when you have a really good defense that can stop the running game and control the line of scrimmage like Wisconsin has, well, you're going to need a little bit more help. See, Cardell Jones, the reason they ripped Wisconsin apart is because he threw all over them. He had a combination of running and throwing. Barrett's not good. And Ohio State had, they had some decent receivers. Matter of fact, they had the kid that the Jets drafted. But they don't have that. That's why that scenario is not going to come back. It's just not. But let's say Wisconsin loses, which is more than possible. I mean, they're the dog. And that's another thing, by the way. They were going, well, who do you think should make the playoffs? And they were going, well, if you put these two teams and you compare them, Vegas would have them as a 10-point favorite. So what do you? That team should if we're comparing teams now of who should get to the playoffs based on who would be the favorite. Now, if that isn't the dumbest thing in the world, because how often can we do that in college? We can do that all day. We can do that all day with teams that, okay, you can say, sure, Wisconsin's an underdog. I mean, and they're undefeated. Okay, you can say that Ohio State's favorite, but that doesn't mean they're going to beat them. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. Same thing is, sure, we can say that, look at Auburn. They got 2 losses. But you know the theory. You got 2 losses, another team's undefeated, or they got 1 loss. You know how it is in college. You got 1, they got 2 losses. Chances are the 1-loss team is going to be ahead. But does that mean the 1-loss team is better? No, it doesn't. So it's the same thing. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about who's favorite. We're not talking about who has 1 loss or 2 losses. We shouldn't talk about that. But unfortunately, the committee is not going to worry about who's favorite, and the committee doesn't worry about things that they should be worried about. And you would hope that they wouldn't be like, well, but this team, it's like last year with Penn State. I mean, Penn State didn't get in because they had another loss. That shouldn't have anything to do with anything. The fact that Penn State beat Ohio State on the field, won the division they were in with Ohio State, won the Big Ten championship should have been all that they needed. But no, we got to think about they have 1 more win. I mean, they got 1 more loss, but Ohio State beat Oklahoma. I mean, it's just stupid. Again, what it is the committee is always trying to figure out. See, they know what they like, and this is what they'll do next week if we have a debate over some stupid decision they make. They will fit the answer based on the team they want in. So if they want a team, this time around, if they want a team to win, I mean to get into the playoffs over another team, they'll come up with a reason. They'll say, well, this is the reason. See, I can come up with a reason for every team that I want in the playoffs, and that's all they would do. Now, it doesn't mean that they're right. It just means that they'll say, like last year. Remember, we all thought, based on what they've said forever, that there's no way a team can get to the playoffs over another team when the other team has beaten you in that division and won the conference championship that you're in. I mean, it was unimaginable. And as we've said before, there is no way they would have done the same thing if you switched uniforms. There is absolutely no way that if Penn State played and beat Oklahoma last year, and Penn State lost to Ohio State, and Ohio State won the division and the Big Ten, there is no way that they would have chosen Penn State. No way. They only did it because it's Ohio State. That's it. So they fit their criteria. They fit their reasoning because they favored Ohio State. So what they said was, well, the head-to-head didn't matter. The winning the conference championship didn't matter, but Ohio State beat Oklahoma. And Ohio Penn State had one more loss. So they fit it in. They fit it in to justify their decision. And that's all they're going to do. They're going to come up with some other thing where you're going to go, yeah, but what about I got a counter to that. Well, they don't care about that counter. Their counter is more their reasoning is more important than ours, even though they equal. And that's why it's a stupid system. Because all it is and they're not the experts. These aren't people who made them the gods of college football. They haven't earned this. They're not like the best of the best to decide these to make these decisions. It's just whoever it is, their number, their group. It's their call this season, and that's it. That's all it is. It's their opinion, and that's all it is. It's not fact. It's not, well, here's a decision we made, and anybody would have came up with that decision. No, you could have put 100 different people in that room every year, all the time, and you're always going to come out with different opinions. And that's why it's a wrong system. Because you're always going to rob teams, especially this season. Now, the only way this is a simple situation is if Clemson wins, Oklahoma wins, Wisconsin wins, and Auburn wins. The top 4 teams in the AP poll right now. Then it becomes a very simple. I mean, nobody's even going to, there ain't going to be any sort of drama. We're all going to know who's going to go to the playoffs. If you want drama, you want Miami to win. You want Georgia to win, I guess. You could probably go with that. And you could do that because Auburn beat Alabama. But then again, that doesn't matter, right? Plus, Auburn would have 3 losses. And you want Ohio State to win. And you want TCU to win. I mean, you just want all the upsets. And there's nobody to tell you that that's not going to happen, but that's what you want. You want complete madness. There you go. There's your madness. But Clemson's going to win. Oklahoma's going to win. Auburn is going to win. And Wisconsin, I think, will win, but we'll see. By the way, I was very surprised to see Auburn only a 2.5-point favorite, knowing that Kerryon Johnson's going to play. Wow. Seriously, what are they watching? Now, Fromm went out again and threw 16 passes. So what Kirby Smart has decided is I'm going to roll the dice that when we and by the way, they crushed Georgia Tech. So once again, they can't throw the ball at Georgia. Now it's either if Eason was there, he'd have the same amount of passes and that's their offense, or they just don't want to give Fromm too much to handle. And if that's the case, then you ain't winning a national championship. Because he's going to have to throw the football more than 20 times if they're going to win a national championship. You are not going to get away with him throwing the ball 15 or 16 times in the playoffs if you get there. And really, the playoffs for Georgia starts this week. You're not doing it. You're not winning 3 games in a row with Fromm throwing the ball 16 times. It's not happening. Now, I don't know what they think they see Vegas or anybody in the fact that Auburn's defense, what we saw against Alabama and what we saw against Georgia the first time, what makes them think that Auburn is not going to be able to stop Georgia's running offense? And if you stop Georgia's rushing offense, then that means it's back to Fromm again. So I'm not getting this. Now, I'm not saying that Georgia's defense, see, if Georgia's going to win this game, the defense for Georgia is going to have to make their statement. Their defense is going to have to stop Auburn's running game. That's how they beat Auburn. You win a 13-10, 16-13 game. You get some turnovers. You win a slugfest, and may the best man come out of there, and you can have your Fromm throwing 16 times. That's how you're going to win the game. Because there's no way that I can see, based on what I've seen, how Georgia's going to be able to run the football enough that they're going to be able to get away with winning the game the way they'd like to win it and not put the game on Fromm's shoulders. He's going to have to make throws. And I just, when I see Fromm And I see Stidham because Stidham is definitely growing up. He's playing better. He's reminding me of Coker. That's what we've said all season. Keep an eye on kids like this that struggle early on in the season. All you need to do when you've got the running game and you got the defense, you just got to, because it's not like Stidham, even against Alabama, it wasn't like he had some tremendous game. He just did enough in the game where he didn't do anything wrong. That's how you win with a team like that. And if he had guys actually who caught the ball a little bit more, which I've said before also is a problem for Auburn, which is why they're a fallible team. The receivers aren't very good. So I love that game. The fact that Auburn is only a 2-point favorite is just very, very surprised about that. And I'm also kind of happy that Oklahoma is only a 7-point favorite because I know that they're clearly better than TCU. So, the Clemson-Miami game, I don't know. I knew I was going to get points. I figured Ohio State would be between a 6 and 10-point favorite, and they're 6. Actually, a little on the low side, to tell you the truth. Central Florida is a 7-point favorite in that one. I'm still going to kind of debating on that one. I still believe Central Florida is the best team, but boy, was that an emotional game. That might have been the game of the year, Central Florida, South Florida last week. What a game. But Central Florida did not play a great game. I mean, if Central Florida would have played their best game of the season, which in a game like that you'd want them to play, they would have won that game. They would have definitely won that game a little bit easier. I don't remember the last time I saw a team give up so many 3rd and 15s. I mean, it seemed like South Florida they were able to get drives that continued and scores like 5 or 6 times on 3rd and 15s, 3rd and 14s. And Memphis is hot right now. Memphis has a better offense than South Florida. That's why I think Memphis is better than South Florida. But it's just that was a rivalry game. So you got the rivalry game, and then 1 week later, you got to go play the championship game. That's going to be a tough call for Central Florida. I mean, Memphis is just sitting there. They haven't had a tough game to follow. They're emotionally ready for this one, and psychologically they're ready physically. Central Florida has got to be banged up. Now, maybe it helps Central Florida to be in that mode, but it could also hurt them. FAU is a 10-point favorite over North Texas. That's about right. North Texas not having Wilson, their big-time running back might be an issue for them. Plus, FAU blew them out earlier this year. And I do think FAU is the better team, but 10 points is a lot. And this one is in FAU. Toledo's a 20-point favorite over Akron. That's too much for me. That is a big responsibility to put on Toledo, 20-point favorite. I think I'll be taking the points in that one. And I didn't get into point spread on the Stanford-USC game yet. I would think that USC would be the favorite. I'd probably say they're going to be about a 6-point favorite, I would think. And now that game, I think, is actually more located to where Stanford plays. So I think Stanford's not a bad dog play as well. I mean, USC is definitely vulnerable. They probably should have lost to UCLA a couple weeks ago. So I think Stanford's not a bad play. They're hot right now. They're playing really well. We called that one. We told you that Stanford was a great home dog, and they delivered once again in the game against Notre Dame. I don't even know how they were a dog against Notre Dame. I didn't understand that. All right, and then the coaching situations. Todd Graham, boy, when you have Todd Graham, Brett Bielema, who else is out there? And Kevin Sumlin are available. That is something else. I mean, I am shocked that Kevin Sumlin, Todd Graham, and Brett Bielema can get fired in the same offseason. And these guys are top coaches. Now, Dan Mullen going to Florida was a no-brainer. They should have hired him 3 or 4 years ago. So that was like such a no-brainer that you kind of wondered if it would ever happen. So when it did, I was like, okay, well, what took them so long? So Dan Mullen to Florida makes a lot. I heard somebody going, well, is that a good hire? See, if somebody has to question whether hiring Dan Mullen is a good hire, and I'm not saying like just to be like a host, just to throw it out there, but to actually ask the question, then they know nothing about college football. I'm sorry to ask that question. Of course, it's a good hire. Dan Mullen is an excellent football coach, and Florida is going to once again be a great program. Great hire. I just feel sorry for Mississippi State. But look, if they couldn't win and get Mississippi State to the level that they should be at, with a guy like Mullen, they're just never going to be. That's as high. I mean, that's just the way it is. And they're maybe they'll have a good year every couple of years. They're just never going to be and it's tough. I mean, I get it, especially when you're in the same division as Alabama, Auburn, and LSU. Let's see. Now, I don't know. Arkansas, they're kind of on the same level though as Mississippi State, but Bielema, I'd be interested to see what happens with him. He's a good coach. I don't understand what happened there. To tell you the truth, I think it was somebody that made a terrible decision. Terrible. It's why I thought Chip Kelly going to UCLA made sense, and we talked about it last week. It made more sense for Kelly to go to UCLA. He was a Pac-12 guy. If he went to Florida, he'd be risking something. That's what Brett Bielema did. It's like, why would you go to Arkansas, to the South? That's not where you're from. That's not where you've grown your roots. Nobody understood it, and it didn't work. So he's going to have – so he'll – look, I'll tell you right now, I mean, I don't know what jobs are open. I don't even know if there will be a job opened. But let's say, I'm just throwing it out there, not that I believe, I said this before, I think Lovie Smith deserves a few more years. But let's say if Lovie Smith wasn't there, I would go, hey, I'd hire Brett Bielema in an instant from Illinois. So that's now I don't know where he's going to go, but that's where he needs to go. He needs to go back up somewhere in the Midwest somewhere. That's again, I don't know what's available, but that would make the most sense. And Nebraska. Now, again, with Scott Frost, as I said, maybe we'll get an opportunity to talk to Mark Daniels of Central Florida about that. But I do not believe that Scott Frost is leaving Central Florida. Well, look, he didn't go to Florida. Okay? And I didn't think he was going to Florida. I thought that made no sense. Okay? Scott Frost is going to go anywhere. I believe he's going to go to Nebraska. And that's it. If Scott Frost does not go to Nebraska, he's staying at Central Florida. But we'll see. It would not shock me for him to go to Nebraska. But I hope he stays at Central Florida, because next year he could actually have a better team. Especially, and we talked about this with Mark, if Central Florida can win the AAC, which I still believe they will, so leaning towards they're going to win it, that they're going to do it, and then let's say they surprise somebody and beat someone as the representative of the group of 5, and they go undefeated. All right, and then they end the season, whatever, ranked 8th or 7th. So maybe they got lucky enough they can get one of those games to begin the season. I don't know. I haven't looked at their schedule. I don't know if they can add another game. I'll talk to Mark about that when I get a chance. And hopefully they can, because if they can, then maybe they can get one of those games on their schedule that would put them in a spot like, look at Houston. Remember, Houston beat Oklahoma. Now, they didn't go on and complete the job the rest of the season, but if Houston would have went undefeated the rest of the season in their conference after beating Oklahoma, remember, by the way, the same team that Ohio State beat. See, everybody wanted to give Oklahoma, what was the score in that game? Let me see here. Let me get Oklahoma. I just want, because I remember it was actually, I think it was a pretty reasonable score. 33-23. See, everybody was, Ohio State, they get to go to the playoffs because they wanted Oklahoma. The same Oklahoma team that lost to Houston, and Houston didn't even win the AAC last year. How about that? The same Houston team, because that's again, they wanted to fit Ohio State into their little equation. But Houston went on to lose 4 times. They lost to Navy. They lost. This is the team that everybody was gaga over. Oklahoma lost to a Houston team that lost at SMU. Okay. So it just shows you it's nonsense. Anyway, so that's what you got to do if you're Central Florida. You don't do what Houston did and lose the rest of the way in the AAC. You beat a team like Oklahoma in the beginning of the season. You shocked them. Then you run the table again. Then you'll get to the playoffs. So we'll see about Scott Frost. But Chip Kelly to UCLA is a good move. UCLA is gonna be great again. Florida is gonna be great again with Dan Mullen. Oh, and by the way, the same guys on ESPN, Feinbaum and the rest, criticizing Michigan, all because about the stupid rumors about him getting a lifetime contract. First of all, that's just nonsense, and that's not Jim Harbaugh's fault. Okay, you're gonna talk nonsense about lifetime contracts. That's not Jim Harbaugh's fault. But anyway, they're trying to say that Jim Harbaugh, again, this is what I got to hear, and I've said this a couple years ago. I say this every year, apparently, because Harbaugh will be there another year or two, and he's gone. It don't matter anyway, and he doesn't deserve it anyhow. He can't win a big game, and he can't win a big game, and if he can't win a big game, he's overrated. And what has he really done? They ain't Michigan people, because they don't understand. Okay? Mr. SEC does not understand what it means to be a Michigan guy. No clue. All right? Now, you're going to have your fans that are going to think what they're going to think. But I know what the true blue Michigan people think. And I know what they think about Harbaugh. And I know what Harbaugh thinks about Michigan. All right? Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you because I know Jim Harbaugh. I know him personally. And because anybody can do anything. All right. So if Harbaugh tomorrow leaves Michigan and goes somewhere else, anything can happen. Okay. Anything. But as much as I know, and as much as I know Michigan, and as much as I know Jim Harbaugh, as I have said since he got the job, he is not going anywhere. And the only time he will leave Michigan will be after he wins at least one national championship. At the least. He's not going anywhere, and Michigan doesn't want him going anywhere. And they threw in the thing about the quarterback stuff, which is dead on, and I've said that this year, that it's been the one Achilles heel for Jim Harbaugh, has been how he handles the quarterback situation. But I said, even though I don't think he's done the smart thing, that what he should have done, because he's such a good recruiter, what he should have done all along was last year, you should have went with Peters. Okay, you didn't do it. Well, you definitely should have started Peters this year. Then I got to hear, well, Peters wasn't mature enough, but he just started to get it. You know what? Even if, let's just not even think about the past. Let's just say, okay, you moved to Peters. He would have played against Ohio State, and I said it before the Ohio State game. They could have beat. I really thought they had a great chance to beat Ohio State with Peters. And you know what? They very well could have, because they were up 14-0 with O'Korn. And just imagine if Peters was playing. Just they had, the fact, 14 points was as much as you could expect with O'Korn. So, of course, they weren't going to score much after that. But fact is that now that Spade has transferring, which is the other thing that I mentioned, that they got to get him out of there. And the best thing for Spate and everybody involved in Michigan was for him to transfer. And he did, and he's going to, and I praise the Lord. Because if you're a Michigan fan, and you know now that Wilton Spate's transferring, and then you know that John O'Korn ain't going to be there next year, now the rest is going to be beautiful. Because this is a young team on offense and defense. And now Peters gets in there. And you want to know the other reason that Spate was feeling that way? Because he knows what they feel about McCaffrey. They love Dylan McCaffrey. And between that, there's no more decision to make. It's like what I was saying as a Jet fan with Todd Bowles. So that's why I don't want Josh McCown back next year, even as a backup. Because if I'm McCagnon, I'm not putting that decision and giving Bowles the out to put McCown in. So, because if they draft a quarterback in the first round, I know what Bowles would do. He would do what O'Brien did, except he would probably start him longer than a half. He would go ahead, and because the rookie, let's say it's Mayfield, and he drafts Mayfield, there's no way the rookie is going to look great in practice compared to McCown. So he will start McCown when he should be starting the rookie. So that's why I don't want McCown back. So when I take a look at the Michigan situation, now that Spate's out and he can't play Spate, he's got no alternative but to play Peters or McCaffrey, which means now, moving forward, every time he brings in these blue chip 5-star prospect quarterbacks, that's all that's going to come out of there now. So the days, we as Michigan fans have had to deal with, the Ruddocks and the Spates and the O'Corns, because he just got in there, Harbaugh, a couple of years ago. He hasn't been there for 7 years. He got there a couple of years ago. So he's had to deal with, okay, I got to bring in, and I understood what he did with Ruddock. He didn't have anybody, so he had to bring in a grad transfer. Okay. Then he figured, okay, I don't want to play a true freshman. I don't think he's ready, so I got to play Spate. Then, like I said, you can say what you want about, well, I'm not sure whether or not he's not looking as good as Spate in practice. He's not doing what he needs to do, so I'm going to play Spate. But it's not like this has gone on for 5 years. So I understand to a point what he was doing. But now there's no decision to make. Now you've got Peters and McCaffrey. You got major prospect kids. And as soon as the next recruiting cycle goes, he's going to be bringing more 5-star kids in. And so the days of us going, oh, yeah, but Harbaugh can't win the big game. It's because he got there and he had to deal with these quarterbacks that weren't capable. Now, I give Ruddock a little bit more of a break only because of the fact that in the first year, he didn't have the talent. It wasn't his talent. There were a lot of good players there, but he had to coach them back up to the point that they could play to their maximum, and most of them were on defense. Offensively, there just wasn't enough. He didn't have and the offensive line wasn't very good. He needed more time. I mean, people think these are quick fixes. Like if Michigan was some sort of really good program before Harbaugh got there, and Harbaugh went from good to great, that was a mess that Harbaugh inherited. A mess. Brady Hoke was an awful coach. He recruited well, but he couldn't coach. Why do you think when Harbaugh got there, a lot of these kids went to the NFL draft? But he didn't do enough offensively. The recruiting on offense wasn't very good compared to the defense. So it takes a few years. So now Harbaugh is recruiting, and he's got these 5-star quarterbacks coming in. You're going to have Peters. You're going to have McCaffrey. Now, when you get into these big games with Ohio State, you're not going to be losing them. So this nonsense from these so-called national experts about, but Harbaugh can't win the big one. They brought him in there to win the big one. If he ain't going to win the big one, and he's overrated. We'll see. We'll see how overrated Jim Harbaugh is once a couple more recruiting cycles come in. Peters gets to start with experience. McCaffrey gets to start with experience. We will see. Mark my words, we will see. All right, so that'll wrap it up. Now, here are our guests coming up for this week. So again, we've got a lot of them. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about this week. So it's going to be really cool this week. Looking forward to it. And it should. I mean, and by the way, we're going to have a lot of bowl stuff and playoff stuff too. We're going to do reports. Jeff Shane, my partner at Prime Sports Network, is going to do a lot of bowl reports. Of course, we're going to have a lot of the scouting from the top players to keep an eye on for the draft for every report from Ourlads.com. So we've got a lot of that stuff. But for this week, we're going to just keep you real busy with interviews, preparation for these championship games. So right now we've already booked Carlos Mendez to talk TCU, Gary Furman to talk Miami Hurricanes, Kevin Noon to talk Ohio State, Brian Moss to talk Memphis, Brett Vito to talk about North Texas, Chuck King to talk FAU, Brian Matthews to talk Auburn, and that's only from today. I'm still trying to book Georgia, Central Florida, Wisconsin, Clemson, Oklahoma, Stanford, and USC. So we're going to have a very busy week. We're going to have a lot of great guests on to get you ready for these championship games. We will preview all of the championship games on Friday. The Pac-12 championship game is the only Friday night game. So we're going to preview all the championship games this week. Of course, on Friday's college football show. And, of course, don't forget, we'll have our NFL show with Tony Mejia, too, back on regular day on Thursday. So it's really heating up. It's a great time of year to be a football fan. We'll be here all week long to get you ready for the big games. We'll talk about the playoffs and, of course, all the bowl games as we also get closer to the NFL playoffs here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. Thanks to Matthew Stevens for joining us talking Baltimore Ravens football. Managing editor for ravenswire.usatoday.com. And we will see you again tomorrow. That is when we are going to have our next show. Our next show is going to be the Ourlads Football Network Meeting Room. We'll talk Memphis football tomorrow at 1. And then we'll talk the Conference USA Championship game at 3 with our North Texas and FAU interviews. So that's tomorrow, and then maybe more tomorrow. As I said, book them along. And all week long here on the Ourlads Football Radio Network. Enjoy the week, everybody. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll see you next time.